The lights flashed across her face, but no one was smiling. The room was full of reporters, aliens, humans, and government officials, but she stood alone in the center. Her belly was round, glowing softly through the thin fabric of her ceremonial robe, and yet not a single person clapped for her. Not one hand reached out to help her stand. Not one voice said congratulations, Yelani was pregnant. But this was not a celebration. It was a scandal, a silent punishment. Her own people, tall, sharp-featured warriors from the planet Threxia, had turned their backs on her the moment the news spread. They called her tainted. They said her child was an insult to blood and honor, because the father of the child was not one of them. He was human, and worse, he was already gone. The conference hall was cold, like the people inside it. Yeleni's hands trembled as she tried to smile. The cameras clicked, the flashes burned her eyes. She stood straight, proud, like the soldier she used to be. But inside, she was crumbling. No one wanted to be near her, even on a neutral space station like Terra 9, where thousands of species lived together. She was treated like a ghost. People walked past her without looking. Some whispered, others pointed, and every night she returned to a tiny, borrowed room with only her unborn child to talk to. The media didn't come to support her. They came to capture her shame. They showed her photos with cold headlines. Alien warrior breaks code. Carries human baby. Pregnant traitor. What will the Threxians do? She never responded to the lies. She just waited. Waited for someone to see her, not as a monster, not as a mistake, but as a mother. And then, one day, someone did. He wasn't rich, powerful, or famous. He wore a faded gray uniform and pushed a cleaning cart. His name tag said Jason. He worked quietly in the background, mopping floors and wiping windows, but he noticed her every day, how she sat alone, curled on a bench near the garden dome, how her face stayed calm until she thought no one was watching, then twisted in pain, how she held her belly and whispered to it like she was the only voice the child had in this world. Jason didn't speak. To her at first, he didn't want to scare her, but one evening, when the hallway was empty and she sat there shaking, he stopped beside her. "You okay?" he asked softly, holding out a thermal flask. "It's just tea, nothing special." She looked up, shocked, her eyes glowing gold in the dim lights. At first, she said nothing, then slowly, she reached out and took the flask. Her hands brushed his, and he didn't flinch. "Thank you," she whispered, as if the words hurt to speak. Jason sat on the floor across from her. He didn't ask about the baby, or the rumors, or the cameras. He just asked if she liked the garden dome. She nodded, and for the first time in weeks, she talked. "My people say I'm cursed," she said quietly. "They say my child is not worthy to live." Jason didn't look away. He leaned forward. "And what do you say?" Yeleni's lip trembled. "I say, my child is innocent, and I will protect them, even if I have to stand alone." Jason gave her a sad smile. "Then you're stronger than all of them." After that, he kept coming back, every day, just for a few minutes with tea, a kind word, or sometimes just silence. He didn't treat her like a monster. He didn't ask questions that hurt. He was just there. And that was enough. The others began to notice. Some laughed at him. Why waste time on a fallen warrior? One technician said, "She's nothing now," said a soldier. But Jason didn't care. He cleaned the floor, took his lunch break, and spent it beside her. And every time he did, Yelani felt something return. Not pride, not strength, but hope. One evening, as the lights dimmed across the station and stars glittered beyond the glass dome, Yelani looked at Jason and asked, "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." Jason looked at her belly, then at her face. "I don't need to know you to care," he said. "You shouldn't be alone in this." She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. For the first time, she didn't feel completely invisible, and though the galaxy still whispered behind her back, someone had finally reached out a hand, and she held onto it just a little tighter each day. Jason wasn't a hero. He wasn't a soldier, or a diplomat, or a famous leader. He was just a maintenance worker, a man with calloused hands and a soft voice, but sometimes the smallest kindness shines brighter than the biggest spotlight. He hadn't planned to keep visiting the alien girl. He didn't even know her name the first few days. All he knew was that she was pregnant, alone, and hiding pain behind silence. Each morning before his shift, Jason would stop by the garden dome, and every time she was there, sitting on the same cold bench, wrapped in a thin blanket, her glowing golden eyes half closed. She didn't look like a fierce warrior anymore, just someone tired of being judged. He brought her food now, not just tea, a small energy bar, a thermal pack of broth, even fresh fruit when he could sneak it from the officer's kitchen. At first, she resisted. "I don't want your pity," she said one day. Her voice sharp. Jason just smiled. "It's not pity, it's food." She blinked, then gave the tiniest laugh. It was the first time he'd seen her smile. "Name's Jason, by the way," he said, offering a hand. She looked at it, hesitant, then slowly placed her hand in his. "Yolani," she replied, "of Threxian High Command, exiled. For this." She gently touched her stomach. Jason nodded. "Then it's good to meet you, Yolani." He didn't ask what she meant by exile. Didn't ask about her past battles or what happened to the baby's father. He only asked how she was feeling. If the baby kicked, if she slept well. Yolani found herself speaking more. She told him how she once led a unit of 10 warriors, how her people respected her strength, until they found out her child wasn't full-blooded Threxian. Honor was everything, she said bitterly. Now they say I've polluted the line. Jason didn't look away. Instead, he asked quietly, "And do you believe that?" "No," she said after a long pause, "not anymore." The station was buzzing again. Rumors were growing. Someone had seen her talking to the janitor. "Must be some weird human-alien romance thing," a guard muttered. "They're just using each other," said another. But Jason didn't care what anyone said. He kept showing up, kept offering quiet company in a loud, cruel world. Then one morning, Yolani didn't show up. The bench was empty. Her blanket folded neatly. Jason's chest tightened. He checked the medical wing, the lower decks, even near the cargo bays. No sign of her. Finally, near the emergency clinic, he found her sitting on the floor, back against the wall, eyes closed. A nurse passed by and shook her head. She fainted earlier dehydration, stress. Jason crouched beside her. "You okay?" he asked gently. Yolani opened her eyes and tried to speak, but no words came. Tears slipped down her cheeks silently, without asking. Jason took off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. He didn't say much, just stayed by her side. Until she could stand again, he walked her back to her room, and for the first time, she let him inside. The room was small, almost bare, with a single bed and nothing on the walls. A borrowed place for a forgotten life. She sat down slowly, holding her stomach. "I don't think I can do this," she whispered. Jason knelt beside her. "You already are doing it," he said softly. "Every breath you take, every time you fight through pain. You're doing it." Yolani looked at him, her golden eyes wide. "Why do you care?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I'm just a burden. A problem everyone wants to forget." Jason reached out and gently touched her hand. "Because I know what it feels like to be unwanted," he said. "My parents gave me away when I was a child. I grew up cleaning other people's messes. But if someone had stood by me, just once, maybe things would have been different." They sat in silence for a long time. Then Yolani said, "You're different from most humans." Jason smiled. "Maybe, but I think being human means helping someone when no one else will." After that, something changed between them. Yolani began to trust him, not just with her food or her silence, but with her fears. She told him about the child's father, a human pilot named Relo, who died saving her during a border raid. He was kind, reckless, and loved her more than anything. She had hoped the galaxy would honor his memory through their child. Instead, she got silence and shame. Jason listened to every word, never interrupting, never judging, and when she cried, he didn't tell her to be strong. He just let her be. People still whispered. Some said she was manipulating him. Others said he had a hero complex. But Jason knew the truth. She didn't need saving. She just needed someone to stay, and so he did. Day after day, moment after moment, until the whispers turned to silence. And in that silence, something beautiful began to grow. The days passed slowly, and for the first time in many weeks, Yelani didn't feel completely invisible. Jason was still there, bringing warm food, soft words, and moments of peace. But peace never lasted long in a world that hated what it didn't understand. Outside her small room, the whispers were getting louder again. Her belly had grown larger, and with it, the attention. Officials from the Threxian embassy demanded updates. Human journalists circled like vultures, looking for a scandal. Some said the child was dangerous. Others claimed it was fake, part of some secret program. Yelani tried to ignore it all, but her strength was fading. Her body ached, her heart felt heavy, and one night, when the station's lights dimmed to sleep mode, she broke down. Jason had just entered the room with a small container of soup, but he stopped when he saw her curled up in the corner, her shoulders shaking. He didn't say anything. He simply placed the soup down, sat beside her, and waited. After a long silence, Yelani spoke. Her voice was dry, like wind across old bones. "I'm scared, Jason," she said. "More than I've ever been in my life." He looked at her carefully. "Scared of what?" She wiped her face, but the tears kept coming. "Scared of what they'll do when the baby is born. Scared that my people will take the child. Call it a threat. Scared that the humans will turn away too, like everyone else." Jason stayed silent for a moment, then asked softly, "What happened with the baby's father?" Yeleni's hands tightened around her belly. She closed her eyes, remembering something sharp and beautiful all at once. "His name was Relo," she whispered. "A human pilot. Reckless and too brave for his own good. We met during a joint mission, Threxian and Human Alliance project. Temporary. He made jokes during battles, made tea with no sugar, and never saluted properly." Her lips curled slightly, then trembled. "He saved me during a collapse on a mining moon. Pulled me out with a shattered leg, bleeding and laughing. Said, 'You owe me a drink, big lady.'" Jason listened quietly. There was no judgment in his eyes, only quiet respect. "We fell in love in silence. In secret," Yelani continued. "My people, they don't accept love that crosses bloodlines. They believe Threxians must stay pure. Warriors must breed with warriors, not soft human pilots." One night, Relo intercepted a coded attack signal. A hit on a neutral station meant to start war again. He flew into the ambush alone to stop it. Yelani got the message too late. By the time she reached him, his ship was gone. She stopped talking, her shoulders shaking. Jason gently placed his hand on hers. "You loved him," he said. "More a truth than a question." "With everything I had," she replied, her voice breaking. A long silence followed. Then she looked at Jason, her golden eyes shining with fear. "They'll say the child is a mistake," she said. "That I betrayed everything I stood for. But this baby is all I have left of him." Jason leaned forward and said firmly, "Then we protect the baby together." Yelani looked down. "You do that? Even when the whole station is watching, judging?" He didn't even hesitate. "I don't care about them. I care about what's right." That night, for the first time, Yelani slept without fear. Jason stayed outside her door, just sitting, watching. He didn't need to be a soldier to stand guard. Sometimes protection came from presence, not power. But the galaxy didn't rest for long. The next day, a new official arrived from Threxian Command. He wore black armor and sharp silver medals, his voice like ice. "We will not allow a Threxian heir born of human weakness," he declared. "This station has no right to give her shelter." Jason stepped forward before anyone else could speak. "She's not a threat," he said. "She's a mother, and that child is innocent. The official turned to him coldly. "And who are you?" "A janitor. You think your opinion matters?" Jason didn't back down. "More than yours does, if all you see is shame instead of life." The official looked disgusted. "This is not your fight, human." Jason met his gaze, steady. "It is." Now Yelani, watching from behind the glass, felt something in her chest shift. She had fought battles her entire life, but this seeing someone fight for her, it shook her more than any war she'd ever faced. The Threxian left in silence, but he left with a warning. "This isn't over." Jason turned to Yelani. She smiled weakly. "You really are foolish," he chuckled. "Yeah, but I'm your kind of foolish." She reached for his hand, and the first time, didn't pull away. The station had gone quiet, but quiet didn't mean safe. It meant the press was waiting, watching, planning the perfect moment to strike again. Jason had been warned more than once, by his supervisor, by a few officers, even by his friends. "Stay away from her, Jason," they said. "This isn't your problem. You'll lose your job." But Jason didn't care. Every day, he still brought food, still walked with her, and now, Yelani didn't hide when people stared. She walked slower, her belly heavier now, but her steps stronger. Because she wasn't walking alone anymore. Then one morning, it all changed. The station alarms didn't go off, but the energy shifted. Everyone in the plaza looked toward the docking bay. A large media cruiser had arrived, and behind it, 3 smaller drones carrying the logos of the most powerful news networks in the galaxy. Reporters poured out, some human, some alien, microphones, holograms, flashes everywhere. They didn't ask questions, they demanded them. Is it true that child is half human? Does the Threxian Empire plan to remove her? Why is a janitor involved in a political crisis? Did the human father betray his oath to Earth Command? Yelani stood frozen as the press closed in. Her hands protectively cradled her stomach. The voices were too loud, the lights too bright. They were pushing, pulling. Like vultures fighting over a broken body, Jason rushed to her side. "Back off!" He shouted, but no one listened. The cameras zoomed in on Yelani's frightened face. One reporter stepped too close, brushing her arm. Yelani gasped and stumbled, holding her side. That's when Jason did something no one expected. He stepped in front of her and grabbed the microphone out of a reporter's hand. "You want a story?" he said, his voice shaking but firm. "Here's your story." He turned around, gently took Yelani's hand in his, and held it high for everyone to see. "This woman is carrying a child. Not a weapon," he said, "and none of you cared." Until there was blood to sniff, the plaza went silent. Every drone stopped. Every camera focused. Reporters froze, unsure whether to cut the feed or zoom in. Jason kept going. "She didn't ask for attention," he said. "She didn't ask for fame. She asked for help, for kindness, for someone to sit beside her without hate in their eyes." "And where were you?" he asked the crowd. "Where were you when she fainted in the corridor? When she cried alone in the garden? When she whispered to her baby because no one else would speak to her?" He turned and looked at Yelani. Her eyes were wide, filled with shock, but also something else, something that had been lost for too long, hope. Jason lowered his voice. "She doesn't need a savior," he said. "She needs safety. She doesn't need a father for her child. She needs a world that won't call the baby a mistake." A moment passed. Then the first drone snapped a photo. Jason holding Yelani's hand, her tearful eyes locked on his. The baby's outline gently visible beneath her robe. That image would change everything. Within hours, it was viral. Across human colonies, alien worlds, even Threxian fringe stations. It was called the Hand of Hope. Some praised it Jason as a hero. Others mocked him as a fool. Some called it propaganda. Some called it love. But for Yelani, it was the first time the world had seen her as more than a traitor. She was a mother, a woman who had carried life through silence, shame and exile, and now someone had dared to stand beside her. Not in the shadows, but in front of the cameras. Later that evening, as the station quieted once more, Yelani sat. In her room with the lights dimmed, Jason sat across from her, his hands still shaking from the attention. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "I know," Jason replied, "but I couldn't stay quiet anymore." She looked down at their hands, still loosely linked. "I'm not used to people fighting for me," she said. Jason smiled gently. "Then get used to it." That night, no one knocked on her door, no guards came, no reporters shouted. Only silence remained. But for the first time, the silence felt safe, because the galaxy had seen something powerful, not a warrior, not a scandal, but a hand held in truth, and the beginning of a fight worth watching. The image of Jason holding Yelani's hand had reached every screen in the galaxy. It was on the front page of human news networks, alien communication platforms, and even underground war forums. Some called it a symbol of hope. Others called it a political mistake. The reaction came like a wave. And waves always crash. Jason's supervisor pulled him into a private meeting. "You've made this station a circus," the man said, frowning. "You're just a janitor, not a diplomat." Jason stayed calm. "She needed help," he replied. "She didn't have anyone else." "That's not your problem," his boss growled. "You want to protect her? Then do it without dragging this station into galactic drama." But the damage, or maybe the truth, was already out. Yelani stayed in her room more after the broadcast. The baby kicked more now, as if sensing the noise outside. She pressed her hands to her belly and whispered soft things. "She's a fighter like her father," she told Jason one night. Jason smiled. "Then she's going to make this galaxy better than it is now." But kindness wasn't the only thing growing. Threats started to arrive, quiet at first. Anonymous messages, encrypted notes. "Silence the human. Remove the hybrid before it's born." The Threxian line must not fall. Jason began receiving warnings from strangers. His door panel was scratched with symbols he couldn't read. One night, someone slipped a tracker under Yelani's door. Jason found it and crushed it in his hand. "This is getting dangerous," he told her. "I'm used to danger," she said softly. "I just never thought I'd face it while pregnant." A week later, it escalated. A group of masked protesters stood outside her room. They weren't just aliens, some were humans too, shouting words like abomination, traitor, and death to impurity. Station security tried to keep the peace, but they didn't. "Act fast." Jason stood in front of Yelani's door with nothing but a broom in his hand. His knuckles turned white as he held it like a weapon. He didn't speak, he just stood there, one man against many. The protest didn't last long, but the message was clear. She wasn't safe anymore, not on this station, not without protection. Jason sat with the station commander the next morning. "She needs full security," he said. "Not just a lock on her door." The commander sighed. "Jason, I admire your heart, but she's not a citizen of this station, and your involvement has made things more complicated." "She's carrying a child," Jason said, voice steady. "A life. Isn't that enough?" The commander looked tired. "Threxian law says the child is a political threat. If she gives birth here, it becomes our problem." "Then let it be our problem," Jason replied. The commander leaned forward. "Would you be willing to sign responsibility?" Jason blinked. "What do you mean?" "You become her official guardian until birth. You take the legal risk, the political heat, the danger." Jason looked toward the window. Beyond it, the stars blinked silently. He thought of Yelani, curled up on her narrow bed, one hand always resting on her belly, protecting it even in sleep. "I'll do it," he said, without hesitation. News of Jason's decision reached Yelani later that evening. She stared at him, stunned. "You didn't have to go that far," she whispered. "I know," Jason said, "but I wanted to." "Why?" she asked, voice trembling. "Because no one ever fought for me when I needed it," he said. "I won't let you go through this alone." She tried to smile, but tears came instead. For the first time in weeks, she let herself cry without Shame, and Jason just sat beside her, holding her hand. No cameras this time, no headlines. Just two people broken, tired, but holding each other up, outside the station. A new order was forming, whispers of Threxian ships moving closer to neutral zones, messages between governments. Talks of removing the threat before it could be born. But inside that small room, something stronger than fear was being born. Trust, bond, love. Jason didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Neither did Yelani, but they both knew this. They wouldn't let go of each other. Not now, not ever. Yelani couldn't sleep. The station lights outside her window flickered gently. But her heart raced like a storm. Her body felt heavy, not just from the child, but from the weight of everything around her. The protests, the threats, the cameras. She had survived many battles. But this one felt different, inside her belly. The baby moved again, stronger than before. It was almost time. She could feel it, the pressure, the pain rising with every breath. Jason was sitting just outside her door again. He had refused to leave. He stayed there every night, even when he had nowhere to sleep, even when people mocked him, even when security told him to back off. Suddenly, a sharp pain hit her side. Her hands flew to her belly, then came another, harder this time, Yelani gasped. And her knees gave out. She grabbed the edge of the small table, but it tipped over. A crash echoed from inside the room. Jason jumped to his feet and rushed in. He found her on the floor, breathing hard, eyes wide with pain. "It's happening," she whispered. "It's coming now." Jason ran to the wall panel and hit the emergency button. "I need medical now, room 312, he shouted. Then he knelt beside her. "Just hold on," he said. "I'm right here." The medical team arrived within minutes. 2 nurses and a doctor lifted Yelani onto a hoverbed. The doctor looked at Jason and said, "You shouldn't come," but Jason didn't move. "She needs me," he said, "and I'm staying." Inside the clinic, alarms were quiet but constant. The baby's heartbeat echoed through the monitor, strong but fast. Yelani gritted her teeth through every wave of pain. Sweat ran down her face, but she didn't cry. She held onto Jason's hand like a lifeline. "Just breathe," Jason whispered. "You've got this." Hours passed like years, doctors whispered. In corners, glancing at the baby's scans. Something was different. Its biology didn't match anything they had seen. Part Threxian, part human, but neither side was dominant. It was something new, something stronger. Finally, with one last cry, the child entered the world. The room went silent. Even the machine seemed to pause. Then came the sound that broke the silence. A cry, high and clear, a baby's voice, announcing its arrival to a galaxy that had tried to reject it. Jason stared in awe as the nurse gently lifted the baby. Its skin shimmered faintly in the lights like soft metal mixed with stardust. Tiny golden eyes blinked open and then closed again. She was perfect. Yelani lay back, exhausted, her eyes barely open. "Is she all right?" she whispered. Jason smiled, eyes full of tears. "She's beautiful," he said. "She's strong like her mother." The doctor came forward, still stunned. "She's completely healthy," he said slowly. "And advanced. Her heart is dual-chambered, her bones denser than both human and Threxian, and her eyes. They're evolving faster than expected." Yelani looked at her daughter. The child was already holding Jason's finger with her tiny hand. "I was so afraid," she whispered. "Afraid she'd be rejected, hated." Jason looked at her and said, "Let them try. She'd change everything." Outside the clinic, word spread fast. The hybrid child is born. Alien human baby. Shows signs of advanced evolution. Hope or threat? The galaxy reacts. Some feared her. Some celebrated her. But no one could ignore her. Jason and Yelani refused interviews. They kept the baby away from cameras. "She's not a show." Yelani said, "She's a soul," but the news didn't stop. Whispers of war, of science, of revolution, all tied to a newborn child. A week later, the station's command center was flooded with requests. Alien diplomats wanted meetings. Human leaders sent messages. Even Threxian envoys, once silent, asked for discussion. Jason knew the storm was only beginning, but when he looked into the baby's eyes, he didn't see fear. He saw something else. Possibility. One night, as Yelani sat by the window, holding her child wrapped in a soft blue blanket, she asked, "Jason, do you think she'd be safe?" Jason didn't answer right away. He walked over, placed a hand on the baby's back and said, "Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday she'd be more than safe. She'd be celebrated." The stars outside Terra 9 shimmered brighter that night, but inside the space station, something brighter had already been born. The child, now named Renai, slept peacefully in her mother's arms. Yelani sat near the garden dome, the same place where months ago she had been crying in silence. Now she was holding a piece of the future, and beside her sat the man who never walked away. Jason had become more than just a name. He was her protector, her voice, her strength when she had none left. But most of all, he had become family, and the galaxy had finally taken notice after days of silence. The United Galactic Council made a public announcement. Yelani and her daughter were to be invited to a peace summit, not as criminals or threats, but as guests of honor. At first, Yelani was unsure. "They only want us because the baby is rare," she said to Jason. "They don't care about me." Jason looked at her and replied, "Then let them see who you really are. Let them see the mother who survived exile, silence, and fear. And if they only want a show," he added with a gentle smile, "let's give them something they'll never forget." The day of the summit arrived. Hundreds of delegates from every corner of the galaxy gathered in the grand chamber of the neutral world, Kara Prime. The room buzzed with politics and tension. Some came to see hope. Others came to look for weakness. But none expected what they were about to witness. The doors opened, and the hall fell silent. Yelani stepped forward, dressed in simple ceremonial robes, not as a warrior, but as a mother, her child held close to her chest. Wrapped in soft white cloth, she did not walk alone. Jason was by her side, dressed in a modest dark suit, his eyes calm. He held her hand not as a bodyguard, not as a symbol, but as someone who never let go. Together, they walked down the center of the chamber. Cameras flashed, lights followed their steps, but neither of them looked at the crowd. They only looked at the path ahead. When they reached the platform, Yelani raised her head. She looked around at the faces, human, alien, cold, curious, fearful, hopeful, and then she spoke. "I was once told that my child would be a mistake," she began, "that she would be hated, hunted, erased. I was told that crossing species was weakness, that love between enemies was betrayal. But I stand here now with my child, alive, strong, breathing." She held Renai up for all to see. "And I ask you all, does this child look like a threat?" The chamber was silent. No one moved, no one answered. Then Jason stepped forward. He took the microphone, glanced at the baby, and then faced the room. "I'm not a soldier," he said. "I'm not important. I'm just a man who saw someone left alone and decided to sit beside her." He looked at Yelani and added, "I didn't plan to fall into this story, but sometimes you don't get to choose your moment." He turned back to the chamber. "This child is not a weapon," he said firmly. "She's a beginning, a sign that two species who once feared each other can create life, not just war." The silence broke into murmurs. Some nodded, some frowned, but one thing was clear: no one could ignore them anymore. After the speech, a representative from Earth stood and clapped. Then a Threxian elder followed, and slowly the room filled with applause. Not wild, not loud, but steady, strong, and respectful. Later that evening, Yelani and Jason sat on a balcony. The stars stretched out before them like a blanket of silver. Renai slept between them, one tiny hand curled around Jason's finger. "You think they'll really accept her?" Yelani asked softly. Jason looked up at the stars. "I don't know if they'll accept her right away," he said. "But they saw her, and now they can't pretend she doesn't exist." Yelani smiled. You know what the Threxian word Rainai means? Jason shook his head. It means light from broken stone, she whispered. A soft thing born from hard places. Jason looked down at the baby's peaceful face. Then it's the perfect name, he said, because that's what you are too. That night, for the first time since everything began, Yeleni didn't feel fear. She felt peace. She felt seen. And as the stars watched from above, she leaned her head on Jason's shoulder, her child safe between them, her past finally behind her. And the galaxy, whether it liked it or not, had changed forever, because one human held her hand in front of the cameras and never let go.